Hello everybody, my name is Robin and I'm one of the crew who's been putting together Radical Restart. This is our in practice video. It's going to go over kind of the broad strokes of what we're doing, how we're doing it. Hopefully it'll put into context some of our aims, we'll talk a little bit about our principles, and we'll talk about what the project has been set up to do and how we hope to achieve this. So the ideas that are framing Radical Restart have arisen from myself and a few other young activists. We've actually written a little blog about why we started Radical Restart. I'll just pin a bit to this here and head over to the blog section on the website to read that. But in general, one of the key things that we saw that was needed was a space where young people, young activists can come together and really talk about what it would mean for us to build a youth movement. So that's not just a movement of young people, that's a movement built around the understanding that we are young and what it means to be young right now. Radical Restart is aiming to be a kind of a catalyst for this space. So it's not trying to be anything of itself, it's not trying to start a new movement, we're not going to have demands or anything like that. It's all about creating a container within which we can talk, where we can learn, where we can teach each other, and we can bring our skills and ideas and thinking about this moment now and about this big question we have of what next. So to help us hold and shape this container, which is Radical Restart, we've come up with 3 aims. So I'm just going to read them now. So number 1 is connecting young people and exploring our unique role in fighting for transformative change. So that's understanding that if young people, we need to talk, we need to get connected, and we need to know what we are. What does young people represent? What is the place we play in fighting for transformative change, and how can we really embody that? Our second aim is to deepen our relationships, skills, and thinking as young activists working across different movements. So this is all about skilling ourselves up, making sure that the conversations we're having are really radical, making sure that the way in which we're learning new skills is really useful, making sure that these skills themselves are ones that, you know, we're sharing and we're being like really mutualistic in the way that we're all growing together. And then the third aim is to prepare for the coming wave of youth revolt through training, dialogue, and mutual learning. So this is a big part of it because what we see coming is this understanding that the economic system especially is totally bankrupt. It's bankrupt morally, but it just doesn't work anymore. And coronavirus has shown that. And what's coming post-coronavirus, we feel, is very likely to be a huge wave of youth-led revolt across the world against the current status quo and against the current systems. And we want to be part of that. And that's a big part of why we're doing this. And we feel to do that, we need to get trained, we need to get talking, and we need to be part of this learning process. So these aims represent kind of what we're calling phase 1 of Radical Restart. And we're using phases because we see that things, you know, it's very good to be conscious of the fact that you can't do everything to begin with. And this phase that we're in is the phase of getting together, of building these connections, of deepening these relationships, and of preparing. But to prepare properly, you need the right space. And at Radical Restart, we've got some ideas about how to do this. So it's a space, but it's definitely a space with a little bit of an agenda. One of these agendas is obviously the understanding that we want to cause radical action. We want to cause radical change, and that's why we're here. And the second one is some of these key focus areas that we want to talk about. So we've got 4 focus areas that we think it's really important and that we've come to learn about as young activists, that we think it's really important that most young activists are talking about, and these could be key steps in us preparing a youth movement. So the first one is youth. Really understanding what that identity means, what is the role of youth in our society, understanding how youth are kind of oppressed at the moment, why we live in a society that is like hugely ruled by old people. All of these different things are key to us being able to build solidarity between youth movements, between young people ourselves. And so that brings us to the second one, which is solidarity. What does this word mean? How can we work together? It's very easy to say I'm acting in solidarity, but what does that actually mean? And how do we transfer these words into actions, into movement, into change, into something bigger than this? Solidarity was a huge part of movements in the past, especially at the end of the colonial period or the overt colonial period, and the movements that came out of Africa especially, but in many other places for solidarity. And it's this kind of, we want to spread the lost art of solidarity and reclaim it as something that this generation is going to do, and this generation is going to do it better than any generation has before. Because to solve global problems, you need to act in solidarity in global ways. And that brings us on to the third one, which we see as a global problem, and this is one of the key problems we're talking about, and this is education. Most young people spend all of their lives in education. If you're at school, you're spending, 8 hours a day at school, 3-4 hours every evening doing homework. If you're at university, you could spend the whole day studying for years and years on end. And this model of education that we have is being pushed across the world. And if that's where most young people spend their time, and most young people, will say that they don't really enjoy school, or they don't understand why they're doing it, or many questions about it. And so this is a key area we feel that we can act within, and a key area where young people have power. So this is something we want to talk about. And then the fourth thing is how we organize. And there's a specific type of organizing called momentum-driven organizing that we want to talk about. This is the kind of organizing that's about mass protest. It's about huge, wide, sweeping changes in society. It's about shooting for the moon and actually winning it. And this is what you can see in movements like the civil rights movement, in women's suffrage, in movements that manage to change the entire fabric of what we see as a culture. And there's lots of science coming out about this now. It's how most revolutions are won. It's how lots of systematic change is won. And we think it's really important that we have these conversations because adults, older organizations across the activism spectrum are having these conversations. And if as young people we don't have them, then we're not standing on an equal playing field. So we're going to be talking about momentum-driven organizing and how we can hopefully use it to bring about transformative change. Alongside these key focus areas and our aims, we've got 10 principles. These kind of just govern a little bit about how we want to work together. I'll put a few up on the screen now that are flashing through. But we've written a couple blog posts to dive a little bit deeper into these. These are initial principles. Obviously, these can change and evolve as we learn together. But the idea is to just shape and hold a bit of the culture that we're trying to create here with Radical Restart. So really recommend everyone head onto the website, have a look at them, and also check out the blog posts to have a bit of a deeper dive. But I can hear you all just saying, but what does it actually look like? These words sound great, this sounds exciting, but how do I get involved? What does this look like in practice? And that's what the second half of this video is going to be about. So in practice, and especially because we're all under lockdown, this looks like a lot of online calls, it looks like a lot of online trainings, and using our 4 key focus areas that I explained earlier, the idea is that we're going to, and through this website, if you go to the Get Involved page, you can find starter sessions. So we're going to host starter training sessions. They're going to be about 2.5 hours each. So pretty accessible, and they're going to be running a couple times a week over the next few weeks. And the idea is that anyone can book onto them. You come to the starter session and we introduce that area. So for example, in the education one, we've got a starter session that's about what is school, understanding the social space that school plays with exploring youth. We've got this starter session that's all about really kind of diving into the youth identity. And once people have come to these starter sessions, they've engaged in these discussions, they've had the chance to share with some other young activists, some other young people to talk about these things. Then at the end of that session, they'll be given an invite link to the Slack workspace. So Slack is a bit corporate and used by lots of businesses, but actually lots of activist networks use it now because it's really useful, super intuitive, and an easy way to organize and build these kind of online communities. So we'll be using Slack, and the Radical Restart Slack will hopefully be this space where we start to bring in young people from all of these different areas, from movements, from new spaces. And then as it continues to grow, as we gain more people, as there's better conversations happening, we're asking more exciting questions, that's when hopefully a few young people, small group, will come together and be like, we want to campaign on this. We want to build a movement around this. For example, with education, we've got some young people already who are looking for other people to build some form of movement so that back, when school begins to restart after the summer holidays, when universities restart, we can have this kind of radical insurgent youth movement going. And what that looks like, we can't tell you. The idea with Radical Restart is that we build this incubation space, this space where we can use the kind of principles of things like momentum-driven organizing. We can use the identity of youth, the concepts of solidarity, our understanding of education to shape campaigns that we hope are really transformative. And we, as a small team in Radical Restart, we just see that if the young people are going to get together, especially here in the UK, if we're going to be transformative, we need to start talking, we need to start learning, we need to start sharing, and we need to start working on our collective struggle. So that's the point of Radical Restart. Hope this video has explained a few things. I'm Robin, one of the team. As I said, head over to the blog, head over to the Get Involved page, explore the website. We'll see you in a session, and let's do this.